Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. I wanted to talk about the power of words and their effect on us. And it doesn't seem to be acknowledged generally just how powerful words are. Because if you have that old, what was that old saying? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never hurt me. That really isn't true in my experience. Because the words that we hear, the words that we take in, resound in our minds, and we tend to speak them mentally again and again. I've cited that example of a friend of mine. I met this lady who we got into conversation, and she started to tell me about the relationship that she'd just gotten out of. And then she proceeded to tell me about this man who had obviously abused her, who had obviously not been very nice to her, and it had created, the words had created a great deal of damage in this lady's psyche, had gone right into the soul, and this is what happens, I think. And she started to tell me everything that he had said. Well, he said that I wasn't very good at this, and then he said, he told me that I would never be able to do that, and it went on, and then finally I said to her, so he really did a good job on you, didn't he, of putting you down? He really did a good job of making you unhappy by the things that he said. And she said, yes, he did. And I said, and now you're no longer in contact with that person, are you? And she said, no, I'm not. I don't speak to him. I don't have anything to do with him. It was just too toxic. And I said, but you're continuing to do the job on yourself that he did on you. And she couldn't quite understand that. I said, what have you told me about him? You've told me every bad thing. I know every bad thing that that man did and said to you. Why? Well, she said, because I told you. I said, no, and why are you telling me? Well, because it was hurtful. I said, are you making it better by telling? And she realized what I was actually trying to say. So it is a fact that words are very powerful. Now, here's the thing, it also goes over. I'm going to try to skip from one thing to another, but all of these little skips are related to each other. So in other words, if you're connected to someone, you're connected to someone who says a lot of negative stuff, who uses language which you feel is toxic to you. This person, he or she, may be a wonderful person to someone else, but probably not to you. So therefore, this is a good case of don't spend any time with the person. Now, is that running away? Damn right it is. Is there a time when you should run away? Damn right there is. And so, choose your people. Choose the people on the basis, choose your people on the basis of the kind of thing that they say to you, on the kind of words that they use which resound in your mind and which you go over and over. Now, if you're in touch with someone who's extremely negative and argumentative, and perhaps very strong in their opinions, you will fail to argue with that person. You will fail to get your point over to that person, because the truth is, and perhaps can be seen to be true, they're not receiving incoming calls. They are negative in their viewpoint, and therefore everything that they say is negative. I know people who are like this. They live a very simple life, completely the opposite of mine, but they lead a very they live a very simple life. They just hate everything. And how do you know this? Because they will continually tell you all of the things that they hate. Yes, well, he kept laughing every time I said this, and I hate that. And whenever I go in the bank, I have to get in line, and it takes an hour, and I just hate it. You know, anybody who uses the word hate constantly is actually imprinting themselves in your mind, and you are going to repeat, just in the same way that that woman I've been explaining did, you are going to repeat those things to yourself in what my friend used to call paranoid fantasy conversations, in which you are arguing an argument in your mind and you are speaking the words for this person who is toxic to you. Now, you think about the person. Here's a good indication of here's a good way of finding out the kind of person that you should really get rid of in your life, or spend a minimum amount of time with. And that is, who do you spend most of your time thinking about in a negative, argumentative way, in which you try to get your point over? That person will be one that you should be working at getting rid of. Now, this is not an easy thing to do, because the person that you finally pinpoint might be a member of your family. Well, you don't have to spend a great deal of time with that person, and you can make your reasons clear as to why you are. You can speak up. Now, I'm not talking about being brutal in the way that you speak the truth, but you can find a way to say it which suits your gentler way of speaking against the violent. I call those kind of words which hurt violent. They're violent in their intent, so I call those abusive. Now, psychologists have long found that any woman that is suffering violent, abusive language will eventually suffer violence. And it does seem to be the case. So I made a few little notes here that I wanted to say. So, a good word makes you feel good. I mean, it's just such a no-brainer. So, in order to find out how we can use this in order to make our lives happier, we need to look at how we can make the lives of those around us happier. Now, it's another no-brainer which people seem to ignore, and that is, you cannot go around making people unhappy and be happy yourself. Doesn't that seem obvious? Because when people around you are happy, you will feel that happiness too. That's why sometimes we went recently to Dumaketti, and we met Bud Brown. And we met Bud Brown. Bud Brown he's a smiler. He's a laughing person. And we sat there. We don't know Bud Brown. We didn't know him. But we went, and because of who he is and what he is, he laughs a lot. And it's easy to tell him a joke, and it's easy to say something funny, and it's easy to laugh with him. So you end up for an entire conversation, and mostly you're smiling. Now, he's a good example. Have a look at his channel and you'll see that he's a smiler. Now, if it is that when you're in the company of someone like him, you will find that you are happy yourself. Let me tell you an example of how this translates in other ways. Whenever you want some advice, and I always say that the best advice is don't look for advice, because people give you advice on the sum total of their own wins and loses, their own triumphs and defeats. And if you're talking to a person who's failed a lot in life, well, you're going to get a lot of bad advice. You're going to get a lot of advice which is based in fear, and I think I've made it clear how I feel about fear. Sometimes doing stuff which makes you scared is the way to advancing, progressing, expanding, getting stronger. So I used to, in the UK, I went through a period where I was a contractor, I don't know everything about contracting, and I didn't then, I don't now. And I used to have people, in the beginning, I had a couple of people. Let me give, just as this example, I used to, if I did some electrics, now I'm very careful about doing electrics, I know a limited amount, but I can follow instructions. So at first, one of the guys that I used to ask of advice from, I might call him and say, Jolly, I'm calling him Jolly because he was anything but jolly. Jolly, I'm wiring in this ring main, and I'm looking at, and I'd explain the problem to him, and he'd say, you're doing that yourself? Are you sure? Are you sure you want to do that? And boy, at the end of that conversation, I wouldn't feel that I could even touch a cable that was just lying on the ground without setting the house on fire. On the other hand, I used to have, at the same time, this was like the terrible twins that I had here. One was Jolly and the other one was Happy. And I would call Happy and I would say, Happy. And I'd make a joke. I'd say, I'm wiring in a ring mail and there's flames coming out of the wall. Have I done something wrong? And we would laugh and we would chat, and then he would say, okay, now what's the problem? And I would say, well, I'm wiring in a ring main and I'd really like to know how I would do this. And he would say, okay, now have you got the thing in front of you? Look at the back of it, it has two, and he would go through it and he would say, it's not a problem, you can do this easily. And I would follow his instructions and I would get the job done. I remember buying a house when I first got married for that time, and I needed central heating, couldn't do without it. Could I afford to pay someone to come in and do it? No, I couldn't. I found a plumber's supply who my then brother-in-law knew the guy, and he introduced me, and I said, I don't know, I'm not a plumber, and I need to know how to install central heating. He said, okay, well, I'll sell you the parts that you do first. And he sold me all the radiators in the UK. It's all about radiators, it's not hot air. In this case, radiators. He said, I want you to put the radiators on the wall and I want you to slope them very slightly to one side. And he told me how to do that. I went back, I put all the radiators on the wall where he suggested that I should. I could screw something into the wall, I could mount a radiator, and he said, okay, now I'm going to sell you all the copper pipe, and you're going to run the copper pipe in this way. And he told me how to run the copper pipe. And then finally, we ended up in the kitchen at a boiler. And the boiler, the heater, is mounted on the wall. Could I mount it on the wall? Well, not at first, but then I worked out that I couldn't lift it straight onto the wall. I worked out, I used my brains, and I worked out if you put it onto a chair, and then from the chair you put it onto the worktop, and from the worktop you put it onto a box, and then from the box you just lifted it a little onto the wall. And I worked it out. Because the man who was helping me, he was using good words, he was encouraging, he was making me feel that I could do it. Was that any different? Was I any different to the person who said, oh, you're not going to hold on. Oh my God, you're going to put central heating on the wall. Oh my God. No, I wasn't. I was the same person. There was a man who used to do a song. I can't remember all the song, but I think I've said it before. And he used to have this strange, funny voice, and he said, my word, you do look queer. And he was talking about a man who was walking out on the street, and he kept meeting people who said, my word, you do look queer. My word, you do look ill. You don't stare. I wouldn't go too far from home because you might fall down and die on the pavement. Oh, my word, you do look queer. And it went on like that until you finally thought that the guy was going to give up, and then he meets one person who says, my word, you do look well. And off they go to the pub, and he buys the man a drink, and they have a great time and a great conversation, and he goes home feeling well. So words are powerful. They affect the way that you operate. So knowing that, stay away from the people who say, my word, you do look queer. Don't entertain them. And if they don't like it, well, they have created the life that they want. And all of their words bring to them, courtesy of the universe or the Lord or God or the powers that be, they bring to them the kind of experiences which will validate the words that they use. Like, well, I hate that, or I really don't like doing that, and nothing gets me worse than that, and life's so full of crap, you know, and the universe listens in a way, and it brings to that person those experiences which will make that person say, see, I told you life was horrible, I told you people suck, you're creating all of that stuff by your words. There was even a person that I told you about on another video, a Japanese scientist who found that words placed, and I've had this denied, I must go and find this man on YouTube again so I can give the link, but he found that he could turn polluted water into purified water simply by the words that he placed on a piece of paper like this, and just put it onto the top of the glass, and he found that words which were spiritual, which were encouraging, which were full of hope, which were full of God, which were full of good, he found that that turned the water. On the other hand, if he put words like, I'm going to kill you, I hate you, you are the worst possible person, I just can't stand you, swear words, profanity, it turned good water bad. So if you have any doubts about whether your words affect you, just look at how you feel when you meet people who tell you about how good life is, and then when you meet people who tell you about how bad life is. I stood on the street in Taliban once with someone that I just met on the pavement, and I said, you know, I've seen so many beautiful women today. And his response was, and I've seen so many ugly women. You get what you're looking for. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. The word is good, and so is life. Bye for now.
Yeah, please like, comment, and subscribe. Good night.
Who were those words coming from?
Give us a thumbs up.